for today's webinar. Uh, the speaker is just logging in. There was some bandwidth problem from his side, so I think he would be joining us any moment. But before he comes on board, let me just give a brief introduction of our organization. All of you know the Ramco Cements Limited is the flagship company of the Ramco Group. Because the Ramco Group is a very old group, started in the year 1938. Ramco Cements was in the year 1961. The first plant was commissioned. So there was a lot of experience as far as cement manufacturing is concerned. As of now, we are manufacturing 12 brands of cement, which falls under the broad heading of ordinary Portland cement, Portland Pozzolana cement, Portland slag cement, sulfate resistant cement, rapid hardening Portland cement, based on the requirements of the customers. So we have these 12 brands of cements which are there. So what we do is that our team of civil engineers goes to the site, tries to understand the requirements of concrete, because we need to understand what exactly the quality of concrete is required at site, because that is where most of us go wrong, because some of the places, mostly in small project sites, we do not define the properties of concrete. Once we define the properties of concrete, I think it's easier for us then to see what should be the constituent materials and how the mix design should be and things like that, because it all starts with the basic definition. As far as Ramco Cement is concerned, we are manufacturing from the eight state-of-the-art production facilities that includes integrated cement plants and grinding units. Presently, with a production capacity of 16.5 million tons, it is expected to be 20 million tons per annum, because we have our new grinding unit at Odisha, our grinding unit at Kolagat and Vizag that also has been expanded, and we have a new integrated plant coming at Kurnool in Andhra Pradesh. So that is expected to make it to 20 million tons per annum. We are also into the field of ready mix concrete and dry mortar products, and we operate one of the largest wind farms in the country. Because ready mix concrete, as all of us know, that we have a unit at Chennai, and we are able to see how concrete is being produced using our cement. And dry mortar products is used for basically non-structural applications, and the dry mortar plant at Chennai is established in collaboration with MTech Germany. That is where we are able to manufacture various kinds of products, like we have the tile adhesive, we have the super fine, that is what you call the putty, and we have various kinds of tile grouts. So all these plastering compounds, all these which are related to non-structural applications, comes from our dry mortar plant. We also have a research center at Chennai, the Ramco Research Development Center. And Ramco Research Development Center is a place where we do a lot of work on concrete as well as cement, because it is not only cement that is important, but what is the behavior of concrete when we use those particular type of cement, that is very important. So what we do is that we get the requirements of concrete from various customers. We have done a lot of concrete mix designs. So by virtue of that, we have a database of concrete mix designs at our Ramco Research Development Center. As all of us know, there are a number of variables. Why? Because you will find that the type of aggregates, the type of sand, the type of chemical admixtures that is available throughout the place, throughout wherever, whichever place we see would be different. The chemical admixtures that would be manufactured would be from different companies. So we have a concrete mix which is a judicious combination of all these ingredients, so that the objectives of the concrete is fulfilled. So that is where one of the basic challenges that we see is the cement chemical admixture compatibility, and that is what we have been able to help our customers, because cement admixture compatibility is sometimes very puzzling, sometimes very tricky, and the easiest way is to do trial set of concrete mix using those proportions, and that is where we have been able to do. So some of those 12 cements which we have been manufacturing is what you could see on the screen. We have 43 grade, 53 grade. Of course, 43 and 53 grade, as all of us know, the codal provision has changed recently. Earlier, there was separate codes. Now we have IS 269 for all the ordinary Portland cement types. We also manufacture the 43 grade infra, which is nothing but 53 grade infra, which is customized to suit the requirement of workability or slump retention of concrete, which is what is being used in most of the project sites, especially RMC units nowadays. Of course, we have the Ramco Superfast because that is based on the precast units that is being manufactured across the place. Because if you look at the wide arena of precast units, you will find that there is solid blocks, there is hollow blocks, there is well ring, there is precast items are also there. Like say, for example, there are precast superstructure for the bridges, which we can see, which is being cast at one place and then transported to the site itself. So for that, the right type of cement is the Ramco Superfast, because wherever we come across the word precast, we are looking at the early strength, which is very important. And of course, whenever we manufacture precast products, we have a different type of mix design there and a complete set of different practices that is being followed there. So we have Ramco Superfast specifically for precast products. Then as far as Portland Pozzolana cement is concerned, we have the Ramco Super Grade, the Ramco Supercrete, Ramco Super Fine, Kartik Super Plus. Now, if you look at Ramco Supercrete cement, which was launched last year, as all of you know that there was a requirement of Portland Pozzolana cement having a high compressive strength as well as a low heat of hydration. So that is where Ramco Supercrete is having that specific quality for concrete itself. So you have both the combinations. You have the rate of gain of strength is quite high as well as the heat of hydration is quite low. So you get whatever can be done from the material perspective, to avoid cracks. So to avoid cracks, what we need to have in cement is the basic thing is low heat of hydration, and that's what Ramco Supercrete is having. So we have combined both the low heat of hydration as well as the high rate of compressive strength in Ramco Supercrete. That is how you find that Ramco Supercrete is suitable for all concreting applications. Then of course we have the Ramco Super Steel and the Ramco Samudra, which is nothing but Portland slag cement, which is being manufactured, and basically we are sending it to the eastern part of the country. Ramco Super Coast is the sulfate resisting Portland cement, which is specifically meant for places where there is a high percentage of sulfates in soil or water. And that is where we need to be careful. Whenever we see sulfates, we should not jump to the conclusion that SRC cement is the right choice. Why? Because there can be chlorides also in combination with sulfates. And whenever there is chlorides in combination with sulfates, then SRC cement is not the right choice. You got to go for blended cements, because SRC cement is weak in resisting the attack of chloride. So that is where whenever you have a combination of sulfates and chlorides, please be cautious before one jumps to the conclusion whether SRC cement is to be used or not. So we have this wide array of cements that is being specified. Of course, more than this, which is specified in BIS, but these are some of the major types of cement that is manufactured by Ramco Cements. As you could see, we do not say that one particular type of cement is good. What we say is that what is the kind of concrete that you are going to make. Say, for example, if you're going to make M20 grade of concrete, then OPC 53 or say, for example, for that matter, rapid hardening Portland cement may not be the right choice. So in that case, one has to go for PPC cement. So that is where, considerations regarding the choice of cement comes. But say, for example, if you have all the facilities for selection of blending materials like, say, for example, pozzolanic material like fly ash or slag, if you have the necessary infrastructure to check the quality of those blending materials, then one can go for ordinary Portland cement and then blend that cement with blending materials so that you get both strength as well as durability. So these are some of the considerations that we need to look into before selection of cement for concrete. Of course, we have been associated with a number of major project customers. As all of you know that when you look at these customers, many of them would be different from each other by virtue of the type of project that they are executing. You have ITD cementation, which is basically in the area of infrastructure works. By infrastructure works, what we mean is that either it could be bridges or ports, structures which are near the marine areas. Especially when those structures are near the marine areas, you would know that it may fall either under very severe or extreme conditions of exposure, by virtue of which we need to be very careful and we need to design those concrete structures also from a durability perspective. Then of course some of those major customers who has been associated with us We have the multi-storied buildings. When you look at those multi-storied buildings, one requirement is that we need to pump concrete to greater height. So when you have to pump concrete to greater height, you need to have a concrete with very high slump. So that is where the concrete mix design changes with the type of project. Of course, our brand is also approved in various metro projects, whether it is Bangalore Metro, Cochin Metro, Delhi Metro. And whenever institutions approve a particular brand of cement for such projects, they visit our cement plant, they look at the consistency. So what is more important is the consistency in the quality of cement, so that you get a consistent quality of concrete. Of course, when you make concrete, it's a combination of the choice of material, the practices that you follow, because you may be having the best quality material with you, but if suppose the practices that is being followed is not up to the mark, then one lands up in problems. Say, for example, during hot weather or during summer season, if curing is not being done, then you have a lot of shrinkage cracks that appears on concrete surface. If compaction is not being done, let us take a very common example of that. You may be having the best quality material, you may be having the best quality cement, sand and aggregates, but then if practices like compaction is not followed, we will find that there can be leakages in concrete surface. So, one important aspect that we need to look at is that if you have to manufacture a good quality concrete, it's a combination of materials as well as practices, and at the same time have a perspective of quality in mind. So then only one can make a good quality concrete. Because we have been seeing this kind of common problems that have been appearing in various concrete structures, which can always be prevented or by good practices, and by looking at those practices which will lessen the effect of such problems. Like, say, for example, if you have shrinkage cracks during hot weather conditions, you go for curing. If you have a problem of leakage or something like that, you should have the facility for having a good compaction, of course, with a proper water cement ratio in concrete. Because if the water cement ratio is not controlled, as all of us know, the strength of concrete gets weakened. So those are some of the considerations that we need to look into, and we have been able to collaborate with many of our project customers to understand their requirements. And we have also seen that our cement is being used many of these projects where they have been able to get the required properties. Of course, that is what I was telling. As you could see, many of these project customers that you could see are from different parts of the country. Some are from the eastern part of the country, some are from the southern part of the country. And concrete is being made during different seasons. Make concrete during rainy season, for that matter. So when you make a concrete during rainy conditions, you need to take precautions for that, because we need to see that there is not much problem. So depending on the climatic conditions also, you will find that there are a lot of precautions that needs to be taken so that you get a good quality concrete. So that is what all about, and we have been able to interact with various customers like this, and that is what we have got, and we are just waiting for the speaker. And before the speaker comes, let me also just tell you that Ramco Cements, we have been having this webinars. Yeah, Suraj?
Gunesh has already joined in, sir.
He joined in, is it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think it's because of the low bandwidth at your place.
Okay. At yes, my place, he's joined, huh?
Yeah.
Sir,
sir, you are there?
Sir, I am joined. Yes, sir, I am here. I am joined already.
Okay, fine. So we have Gunasekharan sir, who have joined us again for the second time. Now, before actually giving it to him, let me introduce him. Dr. K. Gunasekharan is working as a professor in SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. He was awarded a PhD in the year 2011 for the works done on utilization of coconut shell as co-segregate in the development of lightweight concrete in SRM University. He is presently having 28 years of experience. In academics, he's having 21 years and industry 7 years. Major area of interest is concrete technology. That is why he developed one of the special lightweight concrete using coconut shell as aggregate. He has published 14 international papers in SCI Index journals, 39 Scopus Index journal papers, 3 national journal papers, 14 papers in international conferences, 10 papers in national level conferences, written 1 technical note and 3 books with ISBN numbers, and published 4 patents. He has also developed a coconut shell crusher for crushing the coconut shell as aggregate to use in concrete production. He has guided 2 PhD and guiding 7 PhD research scholars. He has guided 40 postgraduate projects and 26 undergraduate projects, participated in 20 programs, conducted 20, 3 international conferences, 1 national level conference, 12 workshops, 3 short-term courses, and 2 faculty development programs. So he's reviewer for some of the reviewed and referred journals like Construction and Building Materials, Construction and Building Materials and Structures, European Journal of Environment and Civil Engineering. So that's what Dr. Gunasekaran for all of us, and he's coming on this webinar for the second time. During the first webinar, in which he had shared his interesting observation of using coconut shell as course aggregate, and that was very interesting. In fact, whatever he had spoken during the lecture was also being utilized in the university as well as in his own house, and that is something which was worthy of appreciation, because that was a combination of both concepts as well as practical this thing. So with those few words, let me again welcome Dr. Gunasekaran sir. Over to you, sir. You can start off with your presentation on concrete properties testing methodology. Thank you so much for having come again the second time. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். Namaskar. Very good evening to all of you. First of all, I thank Engineer Anil Kumar Pillai, GM Technical Ramco Cements Limited, Chennai, for the pleasant introduction on me, and also thank the organizer for given me the one more opportunity to present for Ramco Cements Limited. Especially, I thank Sri Suraj Kumar, the host of this program. He is consistently following me, and then the making the program is possible. And also Engineer T. Surya Prakash Reddy is also the alumni of SRM. He is also following me in a consistent manner to organize this event. I thank all of them once again. Let me share the PPT first, and then I'll start my presentation. Is it visible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Before I start, I will take few minutes time to give a brief outline of my presentation. First of all, the topic on concrete properties is not having any boundary limit to restrict it. So we can go on talk and discuss in different domain and different angle on concrete properties, starting from what is concrete, properties of concrete in fresh and hardened condition. When we say hardened concrete condition, concrete properties under different domain like mechanical properties, durability properties, bond properties, structural properties, both non-structural, structural and non-structural element properties also. Also, all this can be discussed in different ways for different levels of people like student, faculty members, research scholars, and practicing people. But today the forum is different because all level of people are here as the audience. Therefore, today with the time availability, I will try my best to discuss some of the important concrete properties in such a way to attract the different level of the audience. So this is my usual way of starting approach. Normally, my session is always be the it should be interactive section, but since the today forum is different, so one way. So question also will be asked by me, and then answer also will be given by from my side itself. So normally I ask to talk, whenever I am talking about concrete, this is the first question I use to ask the audience, which is the most widely used substance on the earth. So no doubt on that, air and water. Whether you are like it or not, every human being is required a air. You are living in Australia or America, wherever. Every moment for human being, not only for human, all the being, we need air. So leaving that one, next to here, the water is the most important and the widely used substance, irrespective of the different habitats of the people. Then what is the next one? Next to water. There is no doubt on that. It is nothing but concrete. The construction material, so the concrete material is the very compatible one for construction point of view. Many reasons are there. So one is the main ingredients to produce the concretes are very readily available and cheaply available. For example, cement, sand, aggregate, water. These are the main normal ingredients. Except cement, all others are natural resource material. Everywhere it is available. And nowadays, cement is also everywhere. It's available all over the world, even in the remote villages also. So the ingredients available is very cheap and comparatively readily available everywhere. So no need to worry about where to get and where to have it. So that is the main important factor why concrete is very compatible one. The second one is making use of this, it is possible to have any kind of pattern of your shape. It is not necessary that you have to only go for a symmetrical section, regular section like that. Whatever may be the shape you want to create, only thing is you need the mold for the particular pattern. If you prepare the mold, then prepare a concrete, fill it, and then after setting up concrete, just remove it, you'll get the pattern. That is another factor. The next one is the energy. How much energy you have to put to produce the concrete? That is very, very, very simple, very, very less energy. If you decide now, within half an hour, you can collect all the ingredients. Just from taking some proportion, we'll mix the concrete, mix the ingredients, and then get the concrete. That is possible. Whether you are producing a bad concrete or good concrete, that is different. But concrete is a concrete. But no other material you cannot produce on your own without any much energy. For example, a gram of steel is not at all possible. One brick, not immediately possible. So the energy required to produce the concrete is also very, very less. So these are the things why the concrete from here very compatible construction material all over the world, why they are using in here all the massive infrastructures also. Next one, this of course main ingredients are cement, fine aggregate, coarsery and water. But you may be seeing that every day there is a development of concrete. But because of adding some additional material or replacement material. So whatever you have wanted to add into the concrete, that is possible in case of concrete. Any waste, any type of waste, maybe agricultural waste, maybe solid waste, maybe industrial waste, it is possible to accommodate in the concrete. No other construction material will give the flexibility like this. You cannot add any waste in the production of steel. You cannot add any waste in the production of paint. You cannot add waste in the production of bricks. So like that, concrete, only the concrete material will give the flexibility to add any waste to try with the concrete. That is also possible in case of concrete also. So what is concrete? So to understand what is concrete, again, this is the example I used to say, the South Indian favorite breakfast, idli and dosa. So this idli and dosa will need some ingredients, that too with some proportion. If you do not follow the proportion, if you do not follow the quality of ingredients, then your idli and dosa will not be in the form of idli and dosa. It will become something else. Likewise, concrete is also having the ingredients, maybe good quality. At the same time, it should have some good proportions for the requirement of your specific purpose of the work, because the particular purpose of work, if you produce the concrete, that cannot be used for some other purpose, that cannot be used for some other site. So different purpose, different project, different location need different proportion and different quality of materials. So what you have to do, whatever may be the material, that should be in quality as per the standard, and then there should be a proper proportion. Otherwise, it will go in the other way. So comparing to this idli and dosa, the concrete also very similar to that. Like for example, what is the ingredients used for idli and dosa means upral rice, urad dal, and then fenugreek seed, salt and water. All these materials will be there as an ingredients for the preparation of idli and dosa, but it will also affect the quality of all this material as well as the proportion of all these materials. So both the thing will influence the outcome of idli and dosa. The same way, here also cement, sand, aggregate and water are the ingredients having quality of this material also, but there should be some proportion for the preparation of concrete. So if these two are matching together, then only we'll get the quality of concrete. So when you say the properties of concrete, the topic itself is the properties of concrete, and then methodology, how they are using the methodology for different properties, and then what is the significance for comparison purpose. When we see the properties of concrete, it can be discussed in two different ways. One is at the fresh state of condition, the other one is in the hardened state of condition. So in case of fresh state of concrete, the main property is workability. and then segregation, bleeding, and density. These are the main properties of fresh concrete state. We can talk each and every properties in more than 1 hour or 2 hours. Within the time limit 1 hour, it's not possible to cover all the properties. So we may cover just the important parameters and then important methodology and important significant comparison one. For example, you take an example of workability. This is very much important property, but it is very complex one. It is not a static or it is not dynamic. Why it is? See, concrete property which determines the amount of useful internal necessary work to produce the full compaction. It is called normally workable. Otherwise, the property of fresh concrete which determines ease with which it can be placed without any segregation. For this purpose, to define the workability, different standards give some different definition. For example, that American Concrete Institute, ACI, it defines that the workability property of fresh concrete, the ease and homogeneity with which it can be mixed, it can be placed, it can be consolidated, and it can be finished. Similarly, the another organization is there, American Society for Testing and Material, that is ASTM. It defines the property determining how much effort is required to work with the fresh concrete with a minimum loss of homogeneity. Likewise, many definitions are there for the workability of concrete. But from these different definitions, it is very clear that there is no straightforward definition for workability of concrete. Therefore, in very simple words, we can say that the workability of concrete means the ability to work with the concrete, right? The ability to work with the concrete, that's all. So a concrete is said to be workable if it can be handled without segregation. It can be placed without loss of any homogeneity. It can be compacted with a specified effort and it can be finished easily. So if all this happen in your concrete, then we can say that that concrete is a workable concrete. Therefore, in every project or every construction work, a different quantitative or qualitative terms are used to express the workability of concrete. As I said earlier, a particular concrete cannot be used for particular some other location and some other project. So different purpose, different project, different location need different type of workable concrete. So before specifying the workability for any work, the concrete technologist or the site engineer must keep in their mind about what type of work, what type of construction work he is going to execute, what is the method of mixing he is going to be adopted, what is the size and shape of the element he is going to produce, especially if it is a thickness of section is important. Again, the reinforcement detail, how the reinforcements are placed, whether it is a normally reinforced or congested area of reinforcements are placed, which is taking heavy load for the application point of view. Because when your normal reinforcements are used, you can go for normal method of compaction. But in case of a congested reinforcement element, the normal concrete is not possible to get the proper compacted one. So in that case, you have to go for self-compacting concrete with workability required for the particular place. So that also the engineer or the concrete technologist should keep in their mind. And then what is the mode of the compaction? And what is the transportation distance? How the method are going to be placed? And what is the corresponding environmental condition? So all these factors they have to keep in their mind to decide about the workability of concrete. Because concrete that cannot be placed, again, I think, can be placed in a mosque. So for example, if you take a construction of a massive dam construction, for that purpose, if you produce one type of concrete that is entirely unworkable in a thin structural member, that means the prepared concrete for the construction of dam, it cannot be used for a thin structural member. So the different different situations will arise for the different type of workability. So workable concrete compacted by means of vibrator. If you are using vibrator, that may be unworkable for if you do not use the vibrator. So that may be the case. The concrete having suitable workability for a pavement might be unsuitable for the heavily congested reinforced section. Okay. Therefore, many factors are there to affect the workability of concrete. Here internally, if you see that on the concrete point of view, the water content, what you're using it, the aggregate to cement ratio, the size of the aggregate, shape of the aggregate, grading of aggregate, also the surface texture of the aggregate. And of course, if you are using any admixtures, that also the main factors affecting the workability of your concrete. So workability of concrete is a complex property, as I said at the starting. And its requirement is not a static, it is dynamic, because time to time it may vary. So there are different methods for measuring the workability of fresh concrete. So each of them measures a particular aspect of concrete, and there is no unique test which measures the workability of the concrete. Then, what are the different tests are there? So these are the some of the tests are there to find the workability of the concrete. Slump cone test, compactor factors test, flow table, VB consistometer, Gelly ball test. So these are the most commonly used method for testing workability of the concrete. So if I discuss each and every one, but it may need 1 hour for each cases. So I will just touch only one test, which is the most commonly used method for measuring the consistency of concrete, which can be employed both in laboratory and at the site also. That is nothing but slump test. So everybody is know what is slump test. It is because most of the people, even the site engineers, the below site engineers level also, the people are doing this one. But how they are doing it, whether they are systematically following it. Maybe the slump size cone is same, the preparation of concrete remains same, no problem. But while doing the slump test, whether you are following it as per the standard. Normally, people used to go for doing the slump test by dividing 3 layers of slump cone. Even for textbook, even for literature, even for journal papers also, people are mentioning about this like this only. Whenever they are doing some new material from making this to produce the concrete. But see that if you see that standard, that we have the code book for that, IS 1199/1959. There is a revision going on for that in the 2018 is under drafting condition. And also there is a code book called ASTM, American Society of Testing Materials, C143. And one more organization is there, American Association of State Highways Transportation Official, T119. So these 3 codes are there. Of course, many codes are there. BS is there, the All-State Standard is there, New Zealand is there, China is there. But normally as an Indian, we used to follow for Indian standard, and also we used to compare with normally ASTM or ACA or American standard. So if you look at this Indian standard 1199/1959, it is very clearly telling that the entire depth of the slump cone should be divided into 4 layers, not 3 layers. Now, if you want, can see the classification. That is class of your IS 1199. Class 5.1.4 says that the entire height of the slump cone should be divided into 4 layers, not 3 layers. And then each layer, as usual, people are doing 25 stroke of tamping rod. Tamping will be there. They are doing the tamping. But most of them, what they'll do, once the first layer is filled, they'll go for 25 tamping stroke of tamping. Again, they'll go for filling the second layer. Again, 25 stroke they will be giving, but they will not understand that only the second layer alone should get compacted by 25 stroke, not the below layer. But the tamping rod can penetrate the top surface of the previous layer. Up to that level you can go. But you could not go for an entire depth of first layer and then second layer. The particular layer only should be get compacted by 25 strokes. That is how it has to be done. So these 2 factors are very important while doing the slump test. Normally people will not follow this, but hereafter people should follow that. Don't divide into 3 layers. It has to be divided into 4 layers, like 75 centimeters, 75 centimeters, 75 centimeters, like that. And each and every layer should get only 25 stroke. After filling the first layer, second layer should be placed over that. That particular layer should have the tamping of 25 stroke. Maybe the tamping rod may penetrate the surface of your previous layer, underlying layer. That is allowable. But the entire first, the corresponding layer and the previous layer should not go totally the entire depth of your tamping rod stroke. That is very much important. And then this slump cone you can go for up to 38 mm maximum size as per the standard. That is nothing but 40 mm aggregate. So up to that, we can go for this kind of slump test to find the workability of your concrete. Now, this is also another important aspect in case of slump cone test. If your concrete is perfectly consistent, if it is homogeneous, then the shape of your slump cone, after removing the slump cone, you may see that concrete is also the same. You may see that the shape of your slump also will be the, so concrete also will be the same size and shape of your slump cone, but in a different dimensions. See the first figure, the top figure, after removing after replacing that, taking from the slump cone out, and see that the concrete also having the shape like a cone. So whatever the type of concrete, for whatever the type of project you are producing the concrete, it should be like this. But sometimes what may happen, there are three possibilities are there. One is called true slump. That's what we need from our concrete. And the second one is called a shear slump, and third one is called a collapse slump. So here, these three types of slump may occur while doing the slump cone. What type of slump we are getting it, that you should be very carefully observed. We need from the concrete is only true slump, not a shear slump, collapse slump. So what is true slump? So generally, the drop of the concrete must evenly, as I said earlier, it should be evenly all around without any disintegration. So more or less, it has to maintain the mold shape, that is a slump cone size and shape. So this type of slump is most desirable one from the expectation of our concrete. The second one is called a shear slump. So here one side will be higher, the other side will be the second half will be collapsed like this. The center figure, you can see that. So if it is happened like this, if one half of the cone slides down in an inclined plane, it is called a shear slump. So this type of slump, if it is happened, then it indicates that there is a lack of cohesion in the concrete mix. So this shear slump may occur in case of a very harsh mix. So it may undergo, suppose if it is happened like this, then it may undergo some segregation and bleeding, and therefore it is not a desirable, it is undesirable, especially for the durability point of view. The third one is collapse slump. So it indicates that concrete mix is too wet and the mix is regarded as a harsh and lean mix. So it is completely getting collapsed. Normally, the true slump may happen up to 125 to 150 mm from top to bottom. That is top of the concrete from the original size of the slump cone. Then shear slump may be happen. One side may be 25 to 50 mm, the other side may be up to 150 mm. And the third case, collapse slump can be happen up to 225 or 250, sometimes more than 250 mm also. So likewise, it will happen. And the next one is segregation. So segregation means separation or the isolation from one thing from the other thing. So in this case, separation of coarse aggregate from the cement paste is called a segregation generally. Segregation mainly occurs due to excess water in the concrete and non-cohesiveness of the concrete. So a good concrete is one in which all the ingredients are properly distributed to make a homogeneous mixture. If a sample of concrete exhibits a tendency for segregation of, say, for an example, coarse aggregate from the rest of the ingredients, then that sample is said to be showing the tendency for segregation. Such concrete is not only going to be weak, and there will be a lack of homogeneity, all going to induce undesirable properties in the when it is getting hardened state. So in concrete technology, segregation can be of two classifications in general. The first one is coarse aggregate alone may separate from the main mass of the concrete in a plastic condition. The second one is cement paste may be separate from the mix. Both are almost same. This aggregate is separating means cement mud is already there, separate in a separate manner. Cement paste is getting separated, aggregate is already separated. That's the meaning. But then why it is called two types of classification of segregation? It is based upon the volume of coarse aggregate separated majorly or the cement master, so cement paste is getting separated in a volume, the volume basis volume. So both are almost same only, and depending upon the volume of each case will decide about what type of classification of segregation. So co-segregate separating or settling down from the rest of the matrix is called type 1 segregation. That is only co-segregate separation is called the type 1 segregation. The paste separating away from the co-segregate, that is called type 2 segregation. Water separating out from the rest of the material is called the type 3 segregation. It is also called the bleeding of concrete. So these are the generally two classification, but in type wise it is called the three types of that. One is co-segregate separation type 1, second one is cement paste separation type 2, and third one is water separation called type 3, other it is called bleeding of concrete. So segregation is difficult to measure. There is no standard test for the segregation, how to measure the segregation of concrete. So it is very difficult to measure quantitatively, but it can be easily observed at the time of concreting operation. So the pattern of concrete slump test or the pattern of spread in the floor test gives a fair idea. You can get the idea from the by doing the slump test. From there you can get some idea whether the segregation may happen or not. That kind of thing you can be observed, but there is no straightforward test to conduct to get the idea about the exact segregation in a quantitative manner. So if the concrete is used in a steady treatment, what will happen? So there may be honeycomb formation, there can be a porous concrete, and it may be happen then which cannot be considered for a good concrete, and it is not good for durability point of view also. Then if you take a bleeding of concrete, so it is, as I said earlier, it is another form of segregation. So when water comes out to the surface of the concrete, bleeding can be easily identified in the field by the appearance of a thin layer. You can get the thin layer of water over the surface. Once it is finished your concrete element, you may find some thin layer of water in the top surface of a freshly mixed concrete. So what will happen due to bleeding? The water comes up and accumulates at the surface. Also, when the concrete surface is, once it is finished, once again after seeing the thin water film over there, so people used to go for some traveling or floating over the surface. So in that case, the co-segregate goes down and the cement and water comes up to the top. They will not realize that what is happening by the time. So this formation of your cement paste at the surface is called a latents. So you can see the figure here. This is because of not a crack formed in the surface of your concrete. It is because of the latents, the thin layer of your cement paste because of bleeding. So bleeding can be tested in a lab. That is possible, even in case of your field also. So how to conduct this? It is very simple only, but normally people will not do that. So if it is needed to conduct, it is very simple only. Only it needs only cylindrical vessel, measuring jar, and then pipette, then tamping rod. So there is a standard for that. IS 9103 1999. It is revised in 2013. So what you have to do, the cylindrical container is there. You have to fill the concrete in a total height of 250 mm. So this should be filled by approximately 50 mm layer. That means 5 layers. Entire height of cylindrical vessel should be divided into 5 layers, and then each time you have to go for 60 number of strokes compaction. Then you level the top surface and leave it for some time. And what will happen if it is excess waters are there? Then it may come out to the top surface. First 40 minutes interval. First 40 minutes duration. Every 10 minutes you have to measure the suck the water to making use of that pipette. Then after that 30 minutes interval. So till the entire water coming out at the top surface, you can collect it and then transfer the collected water into the measuring jar. Then there is a formula to calculate how much percentage of bleeding water is there in your concrete. That is nothing but capital V divided by small w into S divided by capital W into 100. So what is capital V in the sense how much volume of water you are extracted from your concrete from the measuring, that is collected through the pipette and then collected in the graduated cylinder, that is a jar. That is called bleeding water mass. Then small w is mass of water in the batch, particular batch. So how much batch of concrete you are testing, from that how much mass of water is there. Then that particular mass of concrete is called batch concrete is called S. And you know what is the total mass of the batch? That is called W. So it is very simple technique and it is there in the IS 913 9103 1999. The revised one is 2030. So this can be conducted easily in your lab also as well as the site also. Right. Now we talked about workability, segregation and bleeding in the press state of concrete condition. So to avoid this, how you was that is even we discuss about shear slump and then what is that collapse slump. So to avoid that, very simple concept how your concrete should be when you prepare the concrete in a press state of plastic condition. Now I have shown here curd rice. People used to like especially our South Indians have interest to have a curd rice like a breakfast of idli and dosa. But in curd rice also, people expect it should not be very stiff and it should not be very more water added. It should be like in the consistent manner. That means the curd as well as rice should be blended together like in this form. There should not be a curd separate, there should not rice separate. That was the expectation from the people. So likewise, the same consistent manner, if you are able to produce the concrete like this, see that in this concrete, the ingredients are blended together without any segregations. So it should be compatible with the, like if you expect your curd rice, in what way you will be expecting the curd rice? The same way you have to produce the concrete. That was the idea. Now see the comparison between these two figures, concrete with the scoop and curd rice with the spoon. And see that the comparison between the consistency of the both curd rice as well as the concrete. So if you are able to produce the concrete like this, then you can avoid all this drawback what we have discussed so far, like a segregation, like a bleeding, like a shear slump, like a collapse slump. All these things can be easily you can eliminate when it is produced like this kind of concrete. Now, as I said earlier, many properties are there. So I just only touch only few properties of your press concrete. Now come to the hardened concrete properties. When we say the hardened concrete properties, again, many domains are there to discuss in deep of all the properties. For example, if you take a mechanical properties, this particular domain will have compressive strength, flexural strength, split tensile strength, modulus of elasticity, impact resistance like that. Then the next domain, if you take durability properties, water absorption, sorptivity, volume of permeable pore voids, then RCPT, rapid corrode penetration test, salt solution bonding test, sulfate resistance. Many tests are there in case of durability properties also. Similarly, bond property. When you say bond properties, bonding between the concrete and the steel. When you say steel, different grades of steels are there. In each and every grade, there are different types of diameters also there. So all the things to be done. Similarly, when you go for structural element like a beam, slab, column, like that, many elements are there. In each and every element, different parameters like a flexure, shear, torsion, like that, many parameters have to be tested. Similarly, for non-structural properties, in the sense like a solid block, hollow block, paver block, mosaic tiles, pipes, non-pressure pipe, pressure pipe, many structural elements are there. And each and every element will need some own specific parameters and testing requirement. So all this require all based on the organ concrete properties only, but each and every parameter if I discuss, there is no end for that. So we can go on discuss. So again here also I'll just take the first domain called the mechanical properties. If time permits, I'll go for the derivative properties and other etc. Otherwise, again, if one more opportunity comes, we'll see the next time. So let me take first one, the mechanical properties. When I say, as I said earlier, mechanical properties, compressive strength, flexural strength, split tensile strength, modulus of elasticity, and impact resistance. These are the 5 major mechanical properties for any concrete. Not only for normal concreting, whenever you are using some new materials, you must go for this kind of properties test for your concrete. Now we'll take one by one. First one, compressive strength. So I'll give some brief idea about compressive strength. The compressive strength of concrete is one of the most important and useful properties of concrete. In most structural application, concrete is employed primarily to resist compressive stresses only. In those cases, where the strength in tension or in shear is of primary importance, the compressive strength is frequently used as a measure of the tensile and shear strength of concrete. Compressive strength is also used as a qualitative measure for other properties of hardened concrete. There is no exact quantitative relationship between compressive strength and other parameters in general. So there are many factors are there which affect the strength of the compressive strength of concrete. Mainly there are 5 factors are there which influence the strength of concrete when tested for while doing the compressive strength. And those factors are shape and size of the test specimen. I'll come to the later one by one. Then height to diameter ratio, rate of application of load, then moisture content in the test specimen. Then sometimes you have to go for capping. So that material used for the capping also will affect the strength of the concrete. So if I take completely one by one, again it will go some, it will consume some time. So the important parameters I'll discuss here. We have the code book called IS 516-1959. Again, there is a revision that, and similarly ASTM C339-20 and the BSc 8110-1997. All this code also give the procedure for compressive strength test. So normally it has to be done in the room temperature. We know what is room temperature, 27 degree plus or minus 2 degrees centigrade. Then how to prepare the test specimen? Again, IS 516 specifies that if you are going for a 20 mm aggregate, you can go for a 150 combination. That is, we have cube size of 150 by 150 by 150, and then 100 by 100 by 100, and then 150 diameter, and then 300 mm height cylinder, then 100 mm diameter, and then 200 mm height cylinder. So normally this compressive strength, we are following here in Indian condition only cube size, and in America they are using only cylinders. So what will happen when you are using 20 mm, you can go for 150 combination, or if you are using less than 20 mm aggregate, then you can go for 100 mm combination. Again, there is a problem in compaction. Suppose if you are using a normal on compaction in your site, again like every time we go for only 25 stroke. That is not correct actually. If you are using only 150 mm, 100 mm cube, then only you have to go for only 25 stroke. When you are using for 150 mm cube, then for every layer you have to go for 35 stroke. That is the standard. So 25 stroke is not a constant. So it depends upon your size of the cube, what you are using in the lab, in the lab as well as the site. 150 mm means you have to go for 35 strokes, and if 100 mm means you can go for 25 strokes. Again, each and every cube should be divided into 50 mm layer. For example, 150 means 3 layers, 100 means 2 layers. But in case of generally cylinder compaction, you can go for 30 strokes. And especially this is very much important, SSD condition. You should not use a specimen for compression test immediately after taking from the curing tank or after some time. That means you should not be completely wet and you should not be completely dry. So if it is completely wet, it will give lesser than the actual strength. If it is completely dry, it will give more than the actual strength. So in what condition you have to test in the sense, after taking the cube or cylinder from the curing tank, at the surface level, you have to allow the concrete to dry. So how much time? There is no limit for that because it will affect the environment. It will with respect to environmental condition. Maybe a relative humidity there, temperature, by the time what is the temperature, that will affect. So on our own high judgment, just see that all 4 sides of all 6 sides of the cylinders are getting surface level dry. Then you go for the testing in your compression testing machine. So that is very much important. People will not normally follow. They will be casting somewhere and they will be taking to the testing lab after some time. And the testing lab also will not follow the procedure. They will test even suppose if you are going for after 5 o'clock, they'll keep it in, they'll collect it and they'll keep it in the corner. Then tomorrow, next day only they'll test the pipe. That is not correct actually. So immediately after taking from the water tank, in a surface SSD condition, saturated surface dry condition, it has to be tested. Otherwise, you will not get the actual strength of your concrete. That is one important factor here you must consider. The second one is rate of loading. People will never look on this one. Just place the whatever may be the that is a knob adjusted in the loading knob in your UTM or in your CTM. They will not consider about that. Just they will release it the wheel, and then they place the cube. Then they lock it and then just switch on that and then take the ultimate load. They'll go for calculation. That is not a capsule character. What is the size of your cube you are using it, and what is this? Either it's 150 mm or 100 mm or cylinder you are using it. Based on that, you have to adjust the rate of loading as per the standard. The rate of loading is, it is clearly given 140 kg per centimeter square per minute. That should be the rate of loading. It has to be adjusted in your CTM or in your UTM. For example, if you are using 150 mm cube, then your rate of loading should be 525 kg per second or 5.15 kilonewton per second. In the way, nowadays it is digitally also available in your CTM and UTM. But whether you are applying the rate of loading correctly or not, if you switch on the equipment, automatically it will show the readings. But in what way it is adjusted, that nobody is taking care of that. So you must take care of the rate of loading, because that is also will affect your strength of the concrete. So if you are using 150 mm cube, see that the rate of loading per second is 525 kg or 5.15 kilonewton. It is based on the calculation of surface area only. If you convert this 140 kg per centimeter square per minute in terms of your size of cube as well as second, it will come this value. Similarly, if you are using 100 mm cube, the rate of loading per second is 233 kg or 2.29 kilonewton per second. Then normally we used to go for testing 3 cubes, and the average of 3 only will give the results. But any one of the results, this also people will miss it. If any one of the cube result, it is differ with the plus or minus 15% of your average value, then that cannot be considered as a good quality concrete. That should be rejected. So your result should not be variation of more than 15%, plus or minus. That also to be considered while giving the results of your compressive strength of concrete. So next one, flexural strength. Again, I'll give some brief idea about flexural strength. So concrete is relatively strong in compression and weak in tension. Everybody is a proverb of concrete. Concrete is strong in compression, weak in tension. So in case of reinforced concrete construction, the strength of the concrete in compression is only taken into consideration. The tensile strength of concrete is generally not taken into consideration. The flexural strength of concrete was found to be generally 8 to 11% the compressive strength of concrete if it is the strength of the concrete is greater than M25. If it is less than M25, then the tensile strength may be 9 to 13% approximately. So direct measurement of tensile strength of concrete is very difficult. So neither specimen nor testing apparatus have been designed which assure that uniform distribution of the full applied load of the concrete. So therefore, beam tests are found to be dependable to measure the flexural strength of the property of concrete. So there are two methods are there. One is called the central point load, the other one is called the 2-point load. Compared to central point load testing, the variability of result is less in case of third point loading. There is an organization called Central Road Research Laboratory. They conducted many research on this central point load and third point load test. And then they reported in all the cases, the central loading give higher average value than the third point loading, irrespective of the size of the sample. There is a reason for that. We'll discuss just after a few minutes about that, why it is happening. In the standard method for finding the flexural strength of concrete, the span to depth ratio is kept 4. You might have seen that the size of the flexural prism may be if it is again with respect to size of the aggregate. If you are using 20 mm aggregate, you have to go for the standard size of 150 by 150 by 700 mm prism. If you are using less than 20 mm aggregate, there is nothing wrong. If you can go for the 100 by 100 by 500 mm size of the prism. But if you see the size of the length of the specimen, it is 700, here it is 500. Normally, we used to give the support at the either end, 50 mm on either side. So leaving 50 mm on either side, totally 100 mm is gone. So that means for 150 by 150 prism, we have the effective length of 600. For 100 by 100 mm prism, we have the effective length of 400 mm. Now see that 600 by 150 is 4. 400 by 100 is also 4. So the effective span to the depth of the section should be 4. So that was the standard specified about our size of the bridge. Even you can go for other than the 150 by 100, you have to maintain the effective to that particular depth should be 4. Because if the span to depth ratio is increased or decreased, then the flexural length is getting altered. Similarly, the rate of loading application was also found to be influence the flexural strength of the concrete very significantly. So the strength increased up to 25% with increase in rate of the standard rate. Similarly, here also, I hope you understand what about the why it is kept as a 4. The reason is if it is not keeping the 4, effective to depth ratio is not 4, then the flexural strength will not get exact value. That is why the standard is specified that ratio. And again, here also I am stressing you, insisting that it should be in the SST condition. Here, like a compressive strength, the rate of loading is there it was 140 kg per centimeter square per minute. Here it is 7 kg per centimeter square per minute. Again, if you are using 150 mm combination, the rate of loading is 400 kg per minute. And if you are using 100 mm combination, the rate of loading is 180 kg per minute. And for tentatively, if you want to calculate by knowing the compressive strength of your concrete, IS 456-2000 gives the value for formula, that is to calculate the flexural strength, it is called 0.7 root of FCK. But in general, the compressive strength, that is flexural strength may be in the form of, in terms of 10 to 15% of your compressive strength of particular concrete. And as I said earlier, there are two types of testing methods are there, central point load or 3-point load. It is called 3-point load. Why it is called 3-point, I'll tell you. The other one is called a 2-point load, or sometimes it is also called 4-point load. The general formula, normally we are using a PL by BD square. Now see that, let us assume this is called a 3-point load test or 4-point load test. The first figure, left-hand side figure is nothing but central point load. The right-hand side figure, 4-point load is nothing but 2-point load method. Then why it is called 3-point load and 4-point load means the left-hand side, see that the specimen is getting contact of 3 points. One is applied load, the other two are reactive load. So there are 3 points of contact on your specimen. That is why it is called 3-point flexure test. In case of 2-point load, generally application of point load is 2 at the 2 point only, but applied point is 2 and reactive point is 2. So 2 plus 2, again it is 4 number. 4 point of contacts are there in case of your 2-point load. That is why the other name is called given as 4-point load flexure test. So central point load, the other name is 3-point load. 2-point load is also called 4-point load. The reason is the point of contact between the application of load and reactive point on your specimen. Now again for this test also we have the same IS 516-1959 and ASTM C 1778-18 for 2-point load separately and ASTM C 293-16 for central point load. Now the question is, we have two methods. Which method is the best method? That is the question now. Here, generally, to compare, to get an idea, normally people are doing 2-point load in most of the cases. Even nowadays, the sophisticated UTM and CTM is having the setup for testing the flexural strength in the same CTM itself. So you can replace that particular part and you can insert it. You can test the flexural strength in the CTM itself. That kind of arrangements nowadays there. But earlier it was not there. Only UTM will be there for testing the flexural strength. So here, mostly they are using 2-point load, but whether people are maybe knowing or may not be knowing. Now see that which method will give the accurate value of the flexural strength. Take an example of those two cases. One is maybe a central point or 3-point load or 2-point load or 4-point load. You just see that both the cases are standard cases in case of simply supported. Central point load simply supported is the very first basic condition, general condition. So we know very well about what is shear force and what is bending moment for the standard cases like this. So if for this first case, point load, maximum bending moment is WL by 4 and shear force is W by 2, here it is P is given notation. So P by 2 and then PL by 4. Similarly, in the right hand side 2-point load, since it is symmetrical, the reaction is also symmetrical, and of course shear force diagram, bending moment diagram is shown there. Now our aim is to find the flexural strength of the concrete. That means the concrete should completely subject to only flexure not associated with any other nature of forces or stresses. Now, when you do that central point loading, see that from the left point to right point, from left end to right end, each and every section, see the shear force diagram and bending moment diagram, each and every section is having shear force as well as some amount of bending throughout the left to right. Each and every section is having some amount of shear force and some amount of bending moment. But you now compare that right hand side figure, 2-point load. From the loading point, from the support to loading point, there is a shear force, there is a bending moment. Similarly, from the right hand side, from the right support to next loading point, there is a shear force, there is a bending moment. But see that in between the loading points, there is no shear force at all. It is subject to only maximum bending moment. That means it is subjected to only purely flexure, not associated with any shear, any amount of shear. That is the reason why this method is accurate. That is a precise value given for this flexural strength of the concrete. If you do the central point load, the effect of shear also will be there in your flexural strength of the concrete. It is not completely with respect to only flexure. It is also associated with some amount of shear. So we wanted to get the flexural strength of concrete. So instead of going for central point load, you must go for that 2-point load to get the actual strength of flexure of your concrete. So that is the reason why you want to go for only 2-point load. Again, the formula is very simple, PL by BD square. Now see that both the flexural strength formula, it is for central point load, PL by BD square 3/2. Here it is PL by BD square. So as I said earlier, central point load will give somewhat higher value compared to that 2-point load, because that also associated with, in addition to bending, it also associated with some shear force. So that is the reason. And then how we are getting this PL by BD square, also very simple concept from bending equation value. We know bending equation M by A equal to F by Y equal to E by R. So from that, if you know the maximum bending moment, if you take the combination of M by A equal to F by Y, F is nothing but bending stress, M is maximum moment, I is moment of inertia for the section, Y is the, from the neutral axis, what is the maximum distance. So from this concept only, the formula is derived. So for the student point of view, if you do not remember this formula, if you know the concept of bending equation, then you can get the value, so you can substitute it easily, you can get the formula, and then you can do the further process. So there is no necessity of mugging up this mug-up of your formula. Once you understand the concept, you can easily get the formula. Like this, for many cases are there. So student point of view, don't mug up the formula, get the concept of your particular chapter or particular topic. So once you understand the concept, definitely you never forget about till you are lost back. That is my advice. For example, for some standard cases, even if you wake up from the midnight of your bed, immediately you should tell in your finger points what is that maximum bending moment for simply supported subject to UDL, WL square by 8. So those cases are immediately you should be able to tell for standard cases. For different cases of front, that is different. But only application of concept only you get, then that is not necessary. But standard cases, as a student point of view or the practice engineering point of view, everyone should keep in the fingertips. So for that, everyone should understand the concept behind the particular topic. Now come to the point of the second one, indirect tensile test method. That is after compression and flexural strength, split tensile test is another method. This cylinder splitting test method is also called Brazilian test, because this test was developed in the Brazil in the year 1943. So while doing this test, here also maybe many people are doing this kind of test also, and normally they used to place the packing strip both top and bottom of your specimen. People use this simply about to keep the specimen in the right position. That is not a case actually. There is a technical reason for that. The reason is when you apply a load by keeping the cylinder like in a diametrical manner, the loading condition produces a high compressive stress immediately below the two generators to which the load is applied, that is top and bottom. So, but the large portion corresponding to the depth is subjected to uniform tensile stress acting in the horizontal direction. So they estimated that the compressive stress acting for about 1/6 of the height or depth, and the remaining 5/6 depth is subjected to tension. So in order to reduce the magnitude of high compression stresses near the point of application of the load, that narrow packing strips of suitable material, maybe normally they're using only plywood, having a 25 mm width and 3 mm thickness of plywood. So that should be placed between the specimen and loading pattern in the testing machine. So this is the reason why we are placing the packing strips. So the packing strips should be very soft enough, that is allow for distribution of load over a reasonable area. That normally a plywood of 25 millimeter wide and 3 millimeter thickness along the length of your cylinder. Again, for this split tension system, we have the code book IS 5816-1999, again ASTM C496 2011, and BS 117 and 83. So all this code will give the procedure for tensile test of your split tensile test of the concrete. Again, here also like your size of the specimen, like a compression and flexural strength. If you are using 20 mm aggregate, you can go for a cylinder of size 150 mm diameter and then 300 mm height. If you are using less than 20 mm aggregate, then you can go for 100 mm diameter and 200 mm height of the cylinder. Again, everywhere I am mentioning it the SST condition, because that is very, very important to get the actual strength of your parameter. And here also we have the rate of loading 1.2 Newton per mm square per minute. So the range is 2.4 Newton per mm square per as per the IS code 5816-1999. But actually ASTM suggested the range of the load. It is not exactly for this type of size of cylinder. It should be like this, like that. But whatever the size of cylinder, your rate of loading should be 0.56 to 0.75 km per second. That was the suggestion given in the ASTM standard. The formula to calculate your split tensile strength is 2P by pi dl. Again, with respect to compressive strength, this strength may be 10 to 15% of your compressive strength. Then last but one for this mechanical properties, modulus of elasticity. So again, some theory part, if you want to tell means it is in case of theory of reinforced concrete, we assume that concrete is elastic one, isotropic, homogeneous, and is also conformed to Hooke's law. All these assumptions we are making ourselves on our concrete, but actually none of these assumptions are strictly true, and concrete is not a perfectly elastic material. So concrete, when you apply a load, it will deform it does not follow any simple set of rules. So when RCC is designed by elastic theory, it is assumed that a perfect bond exists between the concrete and steel. That's why we are using that value of small m called modular ratio, the ratio of modulus of elasticity of steel to concrete. M times of steel in concrete is equal to m times of steel, like that. So the accuracy of design will naturally depend upon the value of the modulus of elasticity of concrete, because this modulus of elasticity of steel is more or less equal, definite value. Whatever may be the type of steel or grade of steel, we used to take either 2 into 10⁴ Newton per mm square or 2.1 into 10⁴ Newton per mm square. But in case of concrete, we cannot take it as granted. For all the grade of concrete, this is the amount of 5,000. Even 5,000 root FCK is also only for applicable for some conventional concrete for up to some standard mix M30 or M40 maximum only. That too, only that will give only 10-30 idea about the concrete, idea about the modulus of concrete, elasticity of concrete. If you want to actually what is the modulus of elasticity of concrete, you must go for testing it in real, in laboratory, or otherwise there is no other options are there. So again the same IS code 516 gives the procedure for modulus of elasticity in two different ways. They are mentioning it. Again, BS code is there, or ASTM code is also there. And then if you take our IS code, IS 516-1959, they recommended two types of testing. One is called extensometer by means of extensometer. The second one is called electrodynamic method, that is called dynamic modulus of elasticity. So first, if we take one by one, let us take extensometer method. If you want to use that extensometer method as per our IS code, we need to get two extensometer, and it has to be fixed on your either side of the cylinder in a perfectly opposite to each other. And the gauge point, there may be a distance in your extensometer to fix the gauge points. that gauge point should be exactly matching with opposite to each other. That is very much important. That should be equally divided into from the center point of view. So that is the arrangement you have to make it in case of extension meter. And here also, like a compressor state, the same rate of loading you have to apply, but the procedure is somewhat different. For example, you know what type of concrete you already casted. What is the compressive strength of the concrete? That average compressive strength should be taken as a C value. Assuming that, as per the I'm telling about the parameter and notation. So by knowing the average compressive strength of your concrete, let us assume it is a C value. Now C plus 5, you know what is value of your concrete? C plus 5 kg per centimeter square. So you have to, once you set the specimen in your compression testing machine by using this extension meter, after fixing all the proper extension meter on either side as per the procedure, while applying rate of loading also same only, but how long you have to apply means your stress should be in this level, C plus 5 kg per centimeter. So normally I am telling here, even for the research or research people also will not follow this kind of rules. They'll simply put the cylinder and they goes on apply the load, and each and every increment of load they'll measure the contraction of a specimen, and they'll find the each and every load what is the stress and what is the strain. The corresponding stress and strain to the starting to maximum 70% of your strength they'll calculate, and then they draw a graph and then they'll take the value. That is not actually correct. Actually, if you want to get the real value of your strength of the modulus of estimate, it has to be like this one. That means by knowing the average compressive strength of your concrete, you have to apply a load or stress up to the limit of C plus 5 first cycle. Then you go to up to that level, release it to the point of 1.5. I want to reload it. Release the load to the stress level of 1.5 kg per centimeter square. At that time, you have to take a reading in your extension meter, both separately. You have fixed 2 extension meter. From 2 extension meter, individually you have to take a reading separately. Then the second time also the same rate of loading, but now it is not C plus 5, it should be C plus 1.5. Again, C is nothing but average compressive strength. So here instead of C plus 5 in the first cycle, now it is C plus 1.5 you have to apply. I take a reading in both the extension meters separately. Then reduce the stress level to 1.5 kg per centimeter again you have to take a reading on both extension meter. So this second setup of method, you have to repeat it once again for the third time and repeat the same only. Now see that the difference between the second and third should not be more than 5%. If it is more than 5%, then loading shall be repeated. Sometimes what will happen now, if it is not meeting this more than 5%, less than, if it is not less than 5%, either loading should be repeated or you have to recenter the specimen once again. Maybe centering is also a problem, why it is giving the different value. So see that the centering of your specimen in your CTM or ATM also perfect. Otherwise, you have to recenter it, again you have to repeat the same thing. Now assuming that you have done all the procedure correctly, now you have 2 setups reading for 2 different extension meter. You take your 2 setups reading for 2 different cycles. You draw a plot curve in 2 different ways. And for 2 different extension meter reading, you draw a stress strain curve and connect in a straight line manner covering all the points. Find the slope of each extension meter reading. Again, you have to combine together, get an average of value. While getting average value, see that you should not be more than plus or minus of 15%. If it is more than 15% limitation, then your result should be rejected. So this is how you have to do it in making use of the extension meter. The second method is called electrodynamic. That is nothing but dynamic modulus of elasticity. Now here, normally people will not do this one because we are not using this kind of dynamic modulus of elasticity in proper design of RCC element. Only we are using only static modulus of elasticity. However, how to do this one? Again, there is no exciter needed, and there is a setup for fixing your element at the center. One side there is an exciter. There you have to develop a frequency mode of operation, and the other side there is a pickup point. It is one kind of NDT, non-destructive testing. We are not destructing the element. We are just like your ultrasonic pulse velocity and rebound armor. The same concept here also. One side we will be generating the frequency mode that will be received in the other end pickup point. From that, making use of natural frequency and number of cycle frequency, we have the formula to calculate the dynamic modulus of elasticity of the concrete. So here the modulus of elasticity, this formula is given in the code itself, IS 5166, 4.083 into 10 power minus 9, n square, L square, W. What is n in the sense? Natural frequency cycle per second, L length of the specimen, D density of your concrete. Of course, we have that IS 456, it gives some value for formula for E value 5000 FCK. It is only a short term strike modulus velocity. It may be differ plus or minus 20% with respect to the actual value. So it will give only the tentative idea when you are using 5000 root of FCK. Now see that there are different elastic modulus of elasticity are there, and I'll just take a few minutes to go through that quickly. Now let us assume you have conducted any one mode of test. Of course, before that, this is the this extension meter method is normally used by the people instead of extension meter or this one compressor meter. Compressor meter method is the normally people are using in the lab as well as in the field. So this is very similar to the extension meter method, right? That is why I mentioned extension meter method. The same procedure only. Here also the same procedure only. C plus 5, C plus 1.5 like that only. Let us assume you have done the testing on your specimen and you have drawn the stress strain graph. You see that on the stress strain graph here, that pink color, assuming it is a pink color, is the stress strain curve plotted from your result. Now there are different types of modulus elasticity are there in the concrete technology, AM Neville or even MS Retisa or AM AR Santakumar. People used to give different modulus elasticity. The first one is after getting the stress strain curve from the origin, for your stress strain curve, draw a tangent. Just simply draw a tangent through the origin. That is called a initial tangent. Now finding the slope is not a problem. That is only mathematics, just by strain. So if you find the slope of this initial tangent, then it is called initial tangent modulus. Then you take any point on the curve, on the stress strain curve, draw a tangent. It is simply called now tangent, not initial tangent. It is simply called tangent. Now find the slope of the tangent. That is nothing but tangent modulus. Then you take any point on the curve. That point should be connected to the origin. That is at the pointing of our x and y 0 point. Then this is called any point on the curve connected to the origin. If you draw this, that is called normally secant modulus. If you find the slope of this, that is called secant modulus or simply modulus of velocity of your concrete. There are many points are there. People used to take 3 Newton per mm square, 5 Newton per mm square, 10 Newton per mm square. Normally, you know what is the compressive strength of the concrete. In that maximum 40% you take. 40% of your compressive strength, where it is. Where it is. That point you make a locate on your stress strain curve. Through that point, you connect to the origin. That is nothing but the secant modulus of the particular concrete. Then one more, that secant modulus only we are using for the real practical design of RCC element. Then one more type of modulus of elasticity is there, that is called chord modulus. Chord is nothing but connecting a 2 point in our curve. So that this you see here, it's like something like orange color. Points are there on the curve, connecting 2 points called chord. If you calculate the modulus, that is a slope of this curve, that is called the chord modulus of elasticity. So pink color shows the stress strain curve, blue color shows the initial tangent, green color shows simply tangent, black color shows secant modulus, that is secant normal for the point taken on the curve and to the origin, and orange color shows the point connecting with the 2 points called the chord modulus. So these are the different modulus are there, but generally for the design purpose for your concrete, secant modulus only normally people are using it, and that is nothing but 40% of your compressive strength of concrete where it is lies. From that point to the origin, what is the slope? That is called a secant modulus of velocity. Then I'll come to the point, last one of your mechanical properties, impact resistance. Because concrete is also subjected normally in some places impact load like Suppose unexpectedly, if even your loads are fall on your platform, concrete platform, then the concrete should resist the impact. For that, there is a code called, there is no Indian codes are there. ACI committee, American Concrete Institute 544.1R is that they devise the method for testing the impact resistance of the concrete. There is a mass of your impact and then height of your hammer falling on your concrete element. The concrete size is 152.4 millimeter diameter, thickness is 63 mm. This is the size of the concrete. If you want to test the impact resistance of the concrete, you have to prepare a disc like this, 152.4 and then 63 millimeter concrete. Many number of your it says elements are to be, that number of specimens to be casted, minimum of 3 for each and every day of test, 3 days, 7 days or 28 days. Here, normally people used to get how many number of blows are taking your concrete element for forming an initial crack. That will be observed normally. And then after observing that, again they will continue for the application of your blow of hammer on the concrete element. How much extra blows are taking by your concrete to get final fracture? So formation of initial crack, how many blows, and formation of final fracture, how many blows? That has to be observed for minimum of 3 specimens for at a time to get an average of that. Then, if you refer the papers or literature, they will mention normally and number of blows, forming initial crack this many number of blows, forming final crack this many number of blows. And normally 10 to 20 to 25 blows will be taken care of by normal concrete up to M45 or M40, M40. Now, it can also be calculated in the form of energy because it is impact is nothing but energy resistance only. So in the form of Joule also you can calculate. This is a specimen tested. For example, I'm telling is the formation of initial crack and formation of final crack and the number of dribbles tested. So the impact energy, as I said earlier, it is 10 to 25 blows. Mentioned here, it is for normal concrete having a strength of 40 to 45 Newton per meter square. Then impact energy you can calculate making use of this general physics formula. U is equal to mv squared by 2g, where m is nothing but the mass of hammer what you are following as per the standard. There is a standard weight for that. That is 4.45 kg, and the velocity of the mass of your hammer with respect to height on your specimen. That can be calculated from the basic formula of velocity is equal to g into t. We know what is g. We know what is the time taken for this. T can be calculated from the height, because height is nothing but the gt squared by 2. Again, it is from engineering graphics. So from the engineering graphics, engineering mechanics, h is equal to projectile chapter. H is equal to gt squared by 2. We know what is the height. We know what is the height we are going to allow. That is nothing but 0.457 meter as per the ACI code, and g is standard 9.81. So from this t can be calculated. That t can be substituted over the velocity. Velocity is nothing but g into t, vertical distance. So from that we know what is mass of the weight. We know what is velocity now. What is g also now. So from that, if you for one blows, what is the energy that can be calculated at the end. So for one blow, it is equal to 2.03 kg meter. That is the energy absorbed by your concrete. So how many blows are your concrete are getting taken for your initial crack into multiplied by 2.03 will give the energy absorbed by the concrete in terms of impact resistance. Of course. Sir, I have completed up to mechanical properties. So already now it is 5:30. If I start durability properties, it may take 1 more hour, sir.
We'll have it in next time then.
Yeah, that's what I told in the beginning also, because every parameter, every domain we can talk.
I think next time we can have a 2-hour schedule, sir.
Yeah.
Then it would be better, I believe.
So in that case, I just wind up this mechanical properties up to this.
Fine.
I take this opportunity once again to thank Engineer Anil Kumar Pillai sir for giving me this once again the second opportunity, and also Mr. Suraj Kumar. He is consistently following me, and then Surya Prakash Reddy also following me for a consistent manner to organize this event. I think it is somewhat successful. I think so. I hope so.
Yes. Yeah, it is very good actually, because the method of testing normally we do not pay much attention to, because of which there is difference in results, and
Yes, sir.
we do it mechanically. In fact, there are two questions, sir, which have been put down.
Yes, sir.
Whether concrete which have true slump can be pumped for vertical height more than 50 meter.
Not 50 meter. What question? Can you repeat the question, sir?
Whether concrete which is having a true slump, can it be pumped for vertical height more than 50 meter?
See, that also it is a practical problem. So we have to test it further. What is the pumpable rate you wanted to apply for up to 50 mm? What should be the requirement of your workability by that time? That should be conducted. Based on that, if you done it, if you develop it, then it may go that. That's
It is not the question of true slump alone, but the value of the slump also is important.
It is not. It is not like that. That is why it is called not a static one. It's a dynamic one.
So just by true slump, we cannot determine the height.
True slump will give you some idea about the segregation on. So segregation bleeding will not happen if it is a true slump. So pumpable point of view on elevating to the required level and that they have to run it, because pumpable concrete also will have the sometimes, of course, we are using some super processor for developing that kind of concrete cohesion and all. So segregation and bleeding can be identified from the true slump. That is the idea.
Regarding flexural strength, what would be the variation when we measure the flexural strength by formula as well as by field testing?
That's what, sir. Normally 10 to 15% will be the flexural strength, right? As I said earlier, 9 to 11%, 9 to 13%, some variation will be there. Actual strength may be plus or minus 5%.
That's it. I think that's it, sir. I think thank you so much, sir, for having taken time of your busy schedule. I think online classes and all you would be having.
Yeah, so now it is not there. Everything is over. Now,
oh, is it okay?
Now testing, tests are going on. That Viva wise, that are going on. So classes are over.
Okay. So it was in fact a very good lecture, sir. In fact, the slump cone test itself, we have to be very careful while doing the test itself. It is not just a very simple test, but if you don't exercise care, I think we may not become able to interpret the values correctly. That is very important. And compressive strength also, you have told very nicely the rate of loading, which normally people do not see, 140 kg per centimeter square per minute, which it is neglected normally for 150 mm cubes.
All these things why we are surveying with respect to factor of safety only.
Correct.
So all this value will not affect much actually.
Yeah.
But since we are doing it, it has to be done in a systematic way. That's what my intention, and that was people.
Yeah. So I think that objective. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Because that simple test, we consider it to be too simple without going into the details. So in fact, you have thrown light on that very simple test and how it has to be done very carefully.
Yes, sir. That's what I used to insist my students to go for a systematic way everywhere, every time.
That's a good thing. So thank you so much, sir. In fact, we have also seen this variation of testing and all at different places, and
definitely it will happen.
Even at field also, different people will get different values, and they will start arguing without seeing, the rate of loading. Or whether it has been a SSD condition or not, whether it was in wet or dry condition, nobody is looking at that. Only the value they are looking at. That is the problem.
Yeah, that's what happening normally. So that should not be done actually. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, and let's meet again sometimes in the future. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Nandri, sir. Vanakkam.
Vanakkam.
I'll take leave from you, sir.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.